Number one for me personally, and this is just for me personally, Heart of Glass by Blondie. Yeah, for sure. But that's only just because like that song means a lot to me, and I'm cool in the way that Pitchfork is cool, which is to say defunct, dead.
Yeah, property of Condé Nast.
No more. Yeah, Condé Nast. Okay, what about you? What's your favorite number one song of the 70s?
I actually asked that question without having an answer.
Yeah, it's
Give
hard.
me a second to think about it.
All right, Lucas, you have one?
That's Jesus
tough.
was a cross maker.
Yeah. Wait, did you know going into the movie that's where the song comes from?
I don't know, but I don't know if the song comes from there because
it comes from the book.
I don't know because
I can confirm this.
Oh, okay.
I
was just listening to the live recording, and she introduces the song by saying, "I learned this weird theological fact that Jesus was a cross maker," which I feel like is her misunderstanding something. I don't know, or like I think if she read that in the book, she wouldn't call it a theological fact. But anyways.
I think maybe she was saying that a little tongue-in-cheek, maybe. But she went on the record saying that she like got it from she like was inspired to write the song after reading the book.
Okay, never mind. I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, we're button heads already.
Button heads.
Do you have a number one favorite song of the 70s, Alex?
Yeah, easy. Whole Lot of Love by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
I live my life by that song. I really felt it when Robert Plant sang, I want to be your backdoor man.
Yeah, I know. You are one of the, out of all of the backdoor men I've met in my life.
All the backdoor men of your life.
You are kind of the numero uno.
Yeah.
Yeah, sneaking out the back, in and out of the back door. Yeah.
Yep. And that riff goes hard.
Yeah. Do you like that famous viral YouTube video of the sound of Michael Winslow, the sound effects guy from Police Academy, like performing it?
No, I actually haven't seen that.
Oh, well, you should watch it. And, that's my number one favorite YouTube video of the 2010s.
After we wrap up here, I am going to watch that, and then. Jordan, you were referencing Miley Cyrus singing Black Dog at Glastonbury.
Yeah.
Which has got me thinking about Led Zeppelin.
Cool. And
how much they rock.
I do really like, I don't know, a couple of years ago, maybe it was when I was delivering mail and I could listen, I could have like a sneaky ear pod in or whatever. I whatever, a Bluetooth headphone thing. Mm-hmm. And I got really into, I guess I never really listened to like Physical Graffiti and Houses of the Holy really very much when I was younger, but I listened to them a lot like a few years ago, and I just listened to them so much that like now I can't really even, I like overdid it, but I love those two albums especially. Yeah. Anyway,
the thing about Led Zeppelin, I find it really fascinating to listen to live recordings where singers are like trying to perform songs that they can't anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And so with Robert Plant, it's just really interesting because his voice is shot after like, I'm not a big fan of Led Zeppelin, so I don't know like the exact dates and stuff. Some people, but you know, I think it's like midway through 1971 or 1972. He can't sing. It's really bad on Rock and Roll, the song Rock and Roll. And so there are live recordings of Led Zeppelin from like 1972 all the way up until their last shows in like 79, where he's trying to sing Rock and Roll and just fucking blows it, right? And
that's why Miley has to keep up the tradition.
Yeah.
She's the torchbearer.
Yeah, but he changes the melody so that it doesn't, you know, because it comes in like, it's been a long time since I rock and roll, like that. And he changes it to be like, it's been a long time since I rock and roll.
I love when they do
know?
that. I love when they make it easier for them to sing.
It sounds really bad though. And even then he struggles, like his voice is constantly popping and it's really hoarse sounding. Anyways, my favorite song of the 70s is probably Heart of Glass.
Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's a great song. And, you know, I think so evocative of the 1970s. You
Yeah.
know, like
It's
I would
so
have thought
much-
it was
so-
an 80s.
well,
song,
exactly.
yeah.
So much so that's when we were guessing it, when we were playing the guessing game with Maxim and Zach. I was not able to. I didn't even think of it as a 70s song because I thought it was 80s, and that's how forward looking it is. Because it's a Marauder song, right? I think so. Like, that's why it feels so like 80s.
Giorgio Moroder,
I think so. Yeah.
Heart of Glass by Blondie.
Yeah.
By Giorgio Moroder.
By Giorgio Moroder. Yeah. Any good disco was by him.
And I knew the synthesizer could be a sound of the future.
Yeah. that song is really fun. The Giorgio by Marauder song.
Yeah.
That song is so funny. That whole album is like really
pretty funny, yeah.
It's really funny.
They released a drumless mix.
Such a
okay.
weird call.
Is it good?
I tried listening to a couple songs off of it, and I think I tried listening to Giorgio by Marauder because the drums really go off in that song towards at a certain point. It's just really weird hearing those like naughty synth passages and with no beat behind it. I don't know what it's for. Maybe ketamine?
Maybe. I don't think so. Yeah. Ketamine is for watching great movies like Suspect Zero. That was, if we're talking about movies we watched, I don't do, like I was saying, I don't do ketamine anymore. Not actually for health reasons, just because I ran out and I don't want to go back to the drug dealer because he yelled at me. he was very scary, and so I bought like probably more than I should quantity wise, but I don't feel like I ever had a problem where I was doing it a lot. So it lasted literally like years, like 5 years. And then now it's gone. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go back. I don't even know. He's probably dead, because drug dealers, like, it's a
hard life.
It's the only drug dealer I ever had who like was like a proper, like, I make a lot of money and I have a gun and I am like I have like an apartment in Liberty Village. They're like, oh, do you have to go to a rough part of town to get your drugs? And I'm like, yeah, it's the worst part. It's actually the sketchiest part of Toronto, Liberty Village, a high rise in Liberty Village.
Just based on the factors that you've laid out here, he actually has the longer life expectancy than any of us.
I know, it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
he's doing probably very well for himself. Yeah. But no, I just do it and watch movies. And or in one case, like remember when Ellen was getting canceled? I watched. I did a little bit of ketamine and watched like all these videos about Ellen and like. And I just like I felt what it was like to be Ellen, and to like see it all crumbling, like to be universally beloved and like a symbol of like kindness and niceness and generosity, and squeaky clean kind of afternoon TV for moms and so on, and then to have it all crumble, when it's revealed that you're actually like a very mean and
that's incredible
and vicious like person to like your lowly underlings and so on.
Is there like a 2-hour YouTube essay video chronicling
It certainly
this?
felt like it was. Yeah. I disassociated and became Ellen, So in a way, like
You're just dancing in your living room?
No, I was lying in bed like this. Ketamine's great. Yeah, ketamine is great.
Did you think you had woken up and looked across and you saw a velociraptor and it said Ellen?
Ellen. Yeah, it was a lot like that. Yeah, Ellen.
Ellen.
No, but I would just watch movies like and just kind of nod off and whatever. And the movies like they would last like hours and hours and hours. Anyway, so I don't do anymore. But I did watch this like very kind of junky 2004 seven knockoff called Suspect Zero with like Ben Kingsley and
I vaguely
Aaron
remember
Eckhart.
that movie,
Yeah,
but I don't think I ever
Carrie-Anne
watched
Moss.
it.
The thing that makes it interesting or of note is that and this is the real auteur theory. Like auteur theory means I give something an extra half star if so and so directed it. It's that guy, I don't know how you say his name, but I think it's E. Elias Murhige or Murhige.
Oh my God, Begotten guy.
The guy made Begotten and made Shadow of the Vampire, and this is like the third movie he made.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was watching it. It's sober, and I was like, this is incredible. I like wish I had ketamine because this is the perfect movie. like the movies I would watch were movies that already felt dissociative. That would be easy. That would like were conducive to dissociation. Like a lot of like Lucio Fulci movies, like Italian movies where the lip sync is off, right? And if you have a kind of oniric dreamlike atmosphere, and you watch them, and you're like, whoa, and then you kind of nod off, and you come back, and you're like, this movie is 10 hours long, you know. Like the New York Ripper was like a great one where I'm like, oh, or like Jonathan Demme's like Manchurian Candidate remake, where you're like, this is so like, what is this movie? You know, you're like yeah, and or like videos about Ellen, right? You know, so
I have a DVD copy of Begonnen, and it's my most
Really?
expensive DVD.
oh, I would.
own.
Can I borrow that?
No,
Are you sure? I'll
it's my
treat it.
most expensive DVD.
But you know, I treat DVDs
yeah,
very
yeah.
well.
You could borrow it.
Okay,
yeah.
great. Yeah, it's gone. Yeah, you come out, your shit is gone.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just. I think the movie's on YouTube for you and for
I know,
everyone.
but it's not in a. I find even like a 480p like DVD copy is better
Yeah.
than whatever is on YouTube.
Sure.
I think. Yeah, I know it's on a YouTube or Internet Archive as well, but I've never actually seen it.
Yeah, it's
Not in full anyway.
It's a thing.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little
I have seen
Neither here nor
Shadow
there.
of the Vampire with Willem Dafoe.
great movie.
Yes, it's very funny. It's his second greatest performance after Jesus in this film. Yeah, yeah.
Is this has the podcast begun?
I guess.
feel like
Yeah.
it really gradually rolled in.
Yeah.
Anyways,
We get there eventually.
yeah.
Yeah.
Could I say,
Please.
remember to like and subscribe and
Share.
leave a review.
Share's a big
and
one
share
now.
the franchisees on your podcast
We're
app.
Yeah.
hemorrhaging listeners. I don't know what it is.
Is that true? I haven't really been
It
keeping
might
track.
be Ted.
Do you
It
think
might be
do
the
you think
Ted
it's
curse.
Ted? Do you think it's the Ted movies?
No, I don't know. I don't know what it is.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. Listen, I don't care if you listen. This is for posterity, right?
Yeah.
This is similar to Jonathan Rosenbaum, whose all of his archives are up there on his website. You know, so like you can go read his reviews from when he was in his 20s. And did a lot of people read them at the time? Well, yes. I mean, he was an employed film critic, so it's not really a good example. But he was saying more people are reading him today than probably ever, right? And the people who come back to him, you know, he can see the demographics on people who visit the website. They're younger people typically, right? So
Jesus has a big audience.
I agree. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to get a big bump, the Jesus bump.
Big.
Yeah.
A lot of Jesus freaks and a lot of musical theater kids for that first episode.
I certainly hope so.
And a lot of Defoe heads.
Yeah, Defoe heads, Schrader boys, Scorsese gals. Yeah. Can I also say that we have two guests, and we'll introduce them.
Yeah.
Jordan Seccareccia,
Hello.
a returning guest.
Famous.
But also, wait, what is your last name? I don't know your last name, Lucas.
It's just Lucas.
Okay, it's just Lucas. So and also Lucas, and with the arrival of Lucas on the show as our guest, we have completed the Westelaken
Exodia.
Yeah, exactly.
We've assembled Exodia. What do we get?
Yeah, now all the members of Westelaken have been on the show.
Congratulations on completing Westelaken Exodia.
Expand into everyone else who's ever been on the album, like featured on the album. Yeah. And only then will it be complete. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. You better be.
We already kind of did it for ourselves last episode.
Yeah.
But for these Christ themed, the Christ Quadrilogy, we've kind of been.
Yeah.
The term,
don't you love that word?
I hate it so much.
Don't you love it?
You know where that word comes from, right?
It's a valid, real word that comes from antiquity.
Do you know what that word? Do you know the history of that word?
They created it for the Alien box set, right?
Yeah.
I think Ben told me that.
Yeah.
It was.
It's not real.
Why can't it? It sounds valid to me.
Well, tetralogy.
It would be tetralogy.
Oh.
It would be
Tetralogy is the real word. Yeah.
I see.
After
Quadrilogy
quadrilogy.
for that one.
Quadrilogy, the RIL in quadrilogy is just a hanger-on from trilogy.
Yeah.
It's like they took the T in trilogy and replaced it with quad.
But we got a problem with that?
It's so annoying to listen to people.
Yeah,
sorry, I'm so sorry.
But it sold the box sets, right? Like how many?
Well, okay, but here's a
one
fun
of the most
fact.
Popular box sets ever.
I had it, but when they released the Alien series on Blu-ray, they called it the Alien Anthology.
Right, that's right.
And it was still the 4 films.
That's
it wasn't
right.
like Alien versus Predator or anything.
People
so
made
somebody,
fun of them,
because
yeah.
I think, okay, I haven't looked into this. I wish like a site like Grantland or something was still around to publish like an extensive oral history of the marketing of the Alien box set. But I think somebody just thought, well, it's 4 films. People understand what a trilogy is. So 4 is quad. Yeah. I don't think they invented it like as intentionally. I think they thought it was actually a word.
It is a word. Oh, God. I don't know I don't know who you're talking about.
If anything, it just should have been quadology. No, that's hard to say.
It's hard to say.
Yeah, you need the real. You need the real.
It rolls off the tongue. Yeah.
Real.
I have. Yeah. I cut my ankle while biking and I have a quadrilogy infection. I have a bad case of the quadrille.
Anyway, listen, I wanted it to be a trilogy, but then we tacked on Superstar, and here we are.
did. No, and it was worth it too.
It was worth it. That was a really good episode.
I think that's going to be fun. Yeah.
I love Devin.
Yeah, you're going to like it. It's well, I don't know. I think as you say, we're talking about our experience with religion.
Christ, and our relationship with Christ.
But in that one also our relationship with musical theater, which is pretty funny, I think, too.
But yeah. Do you guys have any relationship with our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ?
That only that you're, insofar as you're comfortable about talking about on the show, obviously, right?
Could I just say that if you have a relationship, if you have a personal relationship with Jesus and you don't feel comfortable talking about it, you're doing something wrong, right?
Well, yes, no, absolutely. But I think more so than just what Alex was saying, like relationship with Jesus, but also we were talking specifically like, your history with religion in general. And so that's all I mean is that if there's like things, you don't want to talk about because they were bad for you.
I was actually being silly.
Well, I know
people
what
don't
you
need to say, don't need to divulge everything about their faith.
Jesus says to pray in your room with the door closed. Does he not?
Well, yeah, if you want to, we already shared that on that last episode.
Should I start or should you?
You can go.
Yeah.
Okay. I was raised like religiously, but it was a sort of
the Church of Rock.
The Church of
you guys pay to Van Halen.
Can you give us a rock? Yeah. Could you give us a rock? Could you from that you learned in church?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Sorry.
I know that's okay. I put you on the spot.
No, I had a religious kind of upbringing, but I think it's similar to what a lot of people would have had, where the religion is a byproduct of like ritual and habit and guilt, I think. And all the same, every institution I attended up until and including my first year of university was a religious institution, except for like the hockey league I was in.
Oh, really?
But
okay.
I went to a Catholic school, and then high school I actually went to a really intense Catholic private school, and then university I went to St. Jerome's at Waterloo, the Christian campus at Waterloo. Oh. And I was a like Jesus Camp kid, so I was really into Jesus Camp. It was a United Church camp, pretty relaxed in a lot of ways, but it definitely was a huge. The Jesus camp really shaped my life. Camp Bimini, shout out, the best.
Yeah.
But it's funny, in high school, which was definitely the most kind of intense religious environment I've ever been in. In high school, our law teacher, you ever look back at your teachers in elementary school and high school and think, like, sometimes you look back and think, well, like, wow, that was like a 30-year-old. Like,
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know what? They were cool. And sometimes you look back and think, I can't imagine being such a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Or you
Sure.
just remember things they said and you're like, you were wrong. You were just wrong. Anyways, there's this one guy, Mr. Purdy. He was the law teacher. And at one point he wheeled in CRT with a VHS tape and showed us a debate between Dinesh D'Souza and Christopher Hitchens, assuming that we were all going to be on D'Souza's side.
Hell yeah.
Right? And it's crazy because obviously they're two pretty repulsive people, but as a high school, especially my feelings and like where I was in life at the time felt very kind of alienated, very angry, very misfit with the people around me. So watching Christopher Hitchens just like do his smarmy upper class
owning with logic.
Yeah. I was just like, this is my guy. I loved him, you know, and D'Souza's awful. Like even setting aside, the kind of personality and filmmaker and pundit that he developed into, his ability to carry himself in a debate is just, he's awful at it. He's really, really bad at it.
We will be doing those films eventually.
I can't wait.
I mean, they are, it is a franchise. Right?
Yeah. Hillary's America, 2016 Hillary's America.
Yeah. Whatever, Obama's America, whoever's
Yeah.
America. Yeah.
But yeah, I have mixed feelings on faith at this point and personal no relationship with Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Lucas?
Similar. I was raised very Catholic, like church on Sunday, and we had to read the Bible after dinner often as well. Catholic school, which up until... Yeah, I think like high school, I started rejecting it quite a bit in the most like generic like r/atheism possible way.
Yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of that. And then I think like into like university and stuff, I basically just didn't really think about it. But yeah, I think recently I've been reconnecting with it in my own way and on my own terms, which has been kind of nice. Just going back and I don't know, revisiting stuff and seeing what I actually think about it from a level-headed adult non-Reddit user perspective. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, well, and of course part of that being watching The Last Temptation of Christ.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, an important text, you know? I mean, but actually, right? Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into it when we talk about the movie.
Yeah, we will get into it.
Yeah.
That's true.
One little curio that I didn't mention in the last episode, halfway through grade 6, my family moved back to Toronto. And, you know, I was Christian Orthodox or whatever. It was just Easter weekend, but I didn't celebrate it because Orthodox Easter is like a month later, suckers.
Yeah.
But we moved back to Toronto to a very Jewish neighborhood. And then for like a large portion of my adolescence growing up, all my friends were Jewish. And I kind of completely lost touch with like Christian traditions and stuff. Like I've been to way more bar mitzvahs than I have been communions. I don't even really get what like a communion is really. But then it was like such a thing that my mom, when I was 13, asked me if I wanted to have a bar mitzvah so I wouldn't feel left out.
Oh, wow.
That's great. Can
Would
you
that
just
have been
can
possible?
you just have one? Yeah.
Well, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. It was like, it was sweet sentiment, but
Yeah.
like, I was just like, no.
Is it even possible to have a
Would-
bar mitzvah?
It wouldn't
I don't
be
think
it wouldn't
like,
be a real bar mitzvah.
no, it
would
wouldn't
just
be, it'd be a party. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know Jews who didn't actually like, you know, sing from the Torah or anything like that, and they just ended up having a party to mark their 13th birthday.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't want to fake it either.
Yeah, I was trying to think also if there was any sort of like, there was some anecdote or something that I didn't bring up last time about, but when you were talking about communions or other sorts of like religious rituals, we didn't, like I said in the last episode, we kind of stopped going to church after we moved to the small town in New Brunswick, and like after you go a couple times just to sort of establish yourself in the community, and then you kind of don't have to keep up appearances anymore. So we just stopped, and that was the extent of going to church and Sunday school and stuff, pretty much. I was baptized like when I was a baby,
Same
Anglican style, and we did it in Maine, I think, where my grandparents had like a place, and they baptized me with like a clamshell or something, like, or whatever sort of like seashell, right? And the day that I was baptized was also the day that I took my first steps.
Wow.
Coincidence?
I think not.
I don't know. Interesting.
I love the like East Coast
Yeah.
shell baptism.
Totally. Yeah. We had a fish fry. Yeah.
A clam bake.
A clam bake. Yeah. We had a real Nolan style
Crawfish boil.
Crawfish boil. Yeah.
Gumbo.
down on the bayou. And so then I was trying to think when was my brother baptized and when more whatever. So this is, I think, a good indication of how it just kind of petered out. It's like, sure, we did that. I was the first grandson, in the mom's side of my family, right? So that was part of it, I think. And then I was remembering when my brother actually got baptized, I think it was kind of like, okay, we got to get some of the rest of the grandchildren. Let's all baptize them together. Or like, I think maybe it was like 2 baptisms and a communion or whatever it was. Like, it was all just kind of like, my parents listen to this. They're probably going to correct me on it. But I remember
like a Christian free-for-all.
There was some sort of like, there was some sort of like day where it's like, we just kind of knocked a couple things off. Like, okay, this cousin got this and this cousin got that.
We got the seashell out.
Yeah, whatever.
We might as well use it.
Pretty much, right? Yeah, it's just an excuse to have one of those famous Nolan style. Yeah, fish fries.
The communion wafer is a Cheddar Bay biscuit.
yeah, it's exactly. Yeah, it was all at Red Lobster, of course. Yeah, we all had Red Lobster bibs.
Is little baby Murray baptized?
Now that's a really good question. So little baby Murray, for the listeners who should be familiar with the details of my personal life, I think, is my nephew. And so, I would say my brother is not a particularly religious person, but my sister-in-law is. And I think I don't think he's baptized yet, but I think maybe they will when they move back this summer. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, actually. I haven't really talked to them about that.
Could I attend the baptism?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, if you want to, yeah.
And if any other franchisees want to attend Baby Murray's baptism.
Yeah, email us at thefranchisespod@gmail.com. And
front row tickets.
Yeah. There's you have to send $5 to the Venmo that we set up, and that gets you 1 ticket to the baptism. Yeah, but it doesn't.
You should also sell indulgences while you're at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also say too, that $5 donation gets you a ticket to come and attend, but you cannot talk to us or look at us. You're just there as a well-wisher, but please do not bother us or invade our personal space.
Are signs allowed? Murray 316?
No, certainly not. Absolutely not. One of the other things, I know I talked a bit about this on the last one, but I was trying to think of, some of my friends were religious and going to youth group. We talked about a little bit about the experience of like being the like tag along friend to youth group in the last episode. One other thing I was remembering is the extent, the kind of different tiers of like our religious neighbors, because we lived on a cul-de-sac in a suburban Saskatoon, and so we were all the kids, like a lot of kids were the same age, and we would all hang out. And there was a period, mostly in like elementary school and early high school, but then in high school you kind of do your own splinter off. But like we would all play outside, we'd all go, call on each other, like and whatever, that sort of thing, and go play in the man-made creek, go down to the old creek and catch crayfish. which we did do. But they were all like, it was all like very suburban style, you know. Yeah. But one of my brother's good friends, their family was Catholic and they were pretty religious. But then next to them, there was these other two kids who we didn't hang out with as much and weren't as close to, who were much more religious, and their parents were much more restrictive. And it was like
the Simpsons characters.
Yeah, it was a little bit like that. It was, and they would
go outside and pray for our souls.
Well, like, yeah, they were a little Rod and Todd kind of vibe, and it was like, well, you know, like older brother, younger brother. They were super into like Veggie Tales, but so I think
they were setting bombs off at the theaters playing The Last Temptation of Christ.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think they were at that tier where it was kind of like you couldn't really get the churchy stank off them, you know. But I don't know, whatever. I was just trying to think about those other kids, you know. Yeah. But
I was referencing The Simpsons when they're watching that like the sex ed video in Miss Krabappel's class, and then she tells the two religious kids, like I forget their names, but they're funny.
Have to leave. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess my brother had maybe, like, you know, I had Jewish friends and I had Christian friends, but my brother did know have a couple of, he had like a Mormon friend and a Jehovah's Witness friend, and that was more, I guess that level of like religious diversity maybe felt stronger because it was things like that, like, okay, I had to leave the class because they talked about sex ed, or I had to or like, okay, so and so can't come out with his trick-or-treating because his parents like don't want to,
right,
you know, whereas like obviously my Jewish friends, that wasn't an issue, right?
Heathens those little Jewish kids.
Yeah, there you go. Should we just talk do you want to do it like we did the last one, where we talked about the movie first and then talked about the other movies we watched after?
Yeah, it's going to be a long list.
In a radical inversion of the normal, format. Yeah, it is going to be a long. I know it's a long list.
We haven't seen each other in a while.
I know, it's been a while. I'll just talk about Suspect Zero again. Sometimes they will cut to a shot of Aaron Eckhart, and you will be like, this guy does not have it. He's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think he's a terrible actor, but it's just like, no. Like, they'll cut to a shot of him and he'll look like a fucking idiot. Just like, I'm a detective.
His haircut in The Dark Knight is really funny when you look back on it.
Yeah. This is 4 years before The Dark Knight, so he's pretty much the same Aaron Eckhart, like, Thank You for Smoking style. Yeah. Ben Kingsley, on the other hand, incredible.
Always had it.
Incredible. Yeah. He's really good in this stupid movie.
And I know you rewatched Sexy Beast.
I did watch
within the last little while.
It's really good.
It's good.
He's incredible in it. Yeah.
Last time I saw Ben, we actually went to the theater, like the theater.
The live theater.
Oh yeah,
the play theater.
We should talk about that.
Yeah. Actually, I was asked recently. Somebody else in my life had seen Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead and was talking to me about it. Oh, Sophie. So shout out Sophie, works at First and Last, used to work at Schmaltz and came and worked one shift, and she was saying like, hey, I went to see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Dead, and asked, do you know a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern in your life? And I did say Ben and Alex.
Ben and Alex. Oh my God.
That's funny.
Okay, but that's very funny. But also, in what way? Because we've just seen the play. So
you can answer that question better than I can.
We're doomed to like existential misery and repetition. And
but really, the question I'm asking is, are whose life are we the side characters in? Yours? Are you Hamlet? Are you the melancholy Dane? I've often thought, sometimes Jordan is the melancholy Dane.
Like Shakespeare plays have like full titles, like The Tragedy of Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. I wish it was Hamlet, the melancholy Dane.
The melancholy Dane, yeah. the great melancholy Dane.
Macbeth, the murderous Scot.
Yeah. I do identify with that one more, being Scottish. Yeah.
No.
There's more in my blood, I can feel it,
Hot take. I love Hamlet. I think it's a really solid play.
I think it's I like Hamlet too. The ones I read like in high school, like Hamlet probably is the best one.
Some people, it's like everyone knows Shakespeare is great, but you read that one and you're like, you got to Hamlet to him.
You got to Hamlet to him. Yeah. Yep.
It's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
As a written
that was good.
text.
Thank you.
As was that joke.
Sorry, I interrupted you while you were talking about going to see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Oh, yeah.
No, it was good.
It was good.
It was a good production.
Yeah.
It was starring the two hobbits.
Yeah, so it was starring Dominic Monaghan
Billy
and Billy
Boyd.
Boyd, who play Merry and Pippin in the Lord of the Rings movies.
And we were super close to getting them on the pod.
Yeah.
Because it was at the CAA Theater right on Yonge, south of Bloor. So
Yeah.
naturally, we went to the Brass Rail afterwards, the strip club.
Yep.
And the hobbits were there.
Yeah.
And
Just like living it up. And you imagine, like, 'cause it really is like the theaters are next to each other.
yeah,
Sorry, I'm
they
not.
share a wall.
Yeah, sorry, not to bring the Brass Rail down to the level of theater. But
No.
it is sort of a theater in a way, you know. Yeah, I just don't want to.
Don't diminish it like
yeah, I don't
that,
diminish it. It's really more of a church. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were there and they were getting a lot of attention.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously they were VIPs, right?
Everyone
And-
was asking them to, recite quotes like,
Yeah.
the salt pork is particularly whatever.
Yeah. And it was cute too, because you could tell, like, well, they're not from around these parts, right? So they're making it rain with the bills, right? But I don't think they understood that they were $5 bills. I think they thought they were ones, because they were just like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Wow.
And I mean, I know those guys are rich, but they're not like Elijah Wood rich. Do you know what I mean? Right?
They
They're not-
probably want $300, you know? They're probably
Yeah.
like, oh shit, I want that $300.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I do think, and so it was cool to see. It's cool to see celebrities in live theater
Cutting loose.
and well, yeah, and to
Oh,
a lesser
sorry,
extent at
yeah.
the strip club. But they were kind of giving off that vibe. Like, I bet, like $300 is nothing. They would pick it up off the street.
So
Not like Elijah Wood, who doesn't walk on the street.
Wipes
with
his
mere
ass
mortals.
with $300.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long were you in the strip club while they were there?
So the play was 3 hours long.
It was long.
Yeah, and we were in the strip club for probably
Double that.
6 hours. Yeah, at
Yeah.
least. And they were holding court there, basically.
Is
I don't
this
know.
a bit?
Well, I mean,
What is a bit?
yeah.
What did the driving instructor tell the playwright who kept on going through stop signs and red lights? Tom, stop hard.
That's pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. Tom Stoppard was there at the club as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to come on the pod.
Yeah, he's very old. Yeah. But he was getting a lot of attention too. The strippers love Tom Stoppard.
Oh, they're like, I love Brazil.
Yeah, they are. I love Brazil.
They
Shakespeare
love to
Yeah,
they love to start hard.
yeah. Oh, okay. This is not a bit. The great experimental Canadian filmmaker R. Bruce Elder was in the audience, who I used to deliver mail to, and I saw him in the bathroom, and I was like, it was like in between the acts, so everyone's trying to pee as quickly as possible. But I saw him, and I wanted to be like, I used to deliver your mail. Yeah. I've seen your films on YouTube. Yeah, but not in very good quality. Yeah. He was the first celebrity I know. Well, celebrity. He was the first noteworthy Torontonian that I delivered mail to before Peterson and the other actual good person, Jennifer Bashwal, the documentarian.
Very cool.
Yeah, that was cool. She was very nice. I met her a couple times.
Awesome.
Yeah. But I also thought I kept hearing this like laugh that was very distinctive, and I was like, is Seth Rogen in the audience? Because it was very like is whatever he does. But I kept looking around, but I couldn't see him, so who knows?
Would have been cool.
He's probably buddies with them. Yeah. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
What did the varsity sports instructor say to the young athlete whose potential was there, but he gave it up to be an actor? Seth, row again.
yeah, very good.
Thank
That's
you.
very good. Yeah,
That's good. It should have been. You should have the varsity coxswain.
Coxswain is the word?
coxswain. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
That's the person in the front of the boat.
You see, Alex and I went to Queens.
You see,
I'm a Queens man.
You see, we're a Queens man. Yeah. Alex and I rode.
we rode crew.
Yeah, I was trying to think what it was. We rode poo. Yeah, Alex and I rode crew at Queens. Yeah, Maestro. There was a funny. Well, we'll talk about that too. But,
Oh yeah.
well, yeah. The. Oh yeah, and then we'll talk about the movie, and then we'll talk about the other movies. Because then if we do it at the end, it'll put pressure to keep it short because we'll want to go home and go to bed.
Yeah,
That's perfect.
yeah.
We're brilliant. It's good to work it out in the show, in the text of the show. Speaking of live things, I rolled out to see Jonathan Rosenbaum, the famous American film critic. Just minutes ago, it was just at U of T, which is close to Alex's apartment, to further docks, and it was really good. Like he's releasing a book. It's like the Jonathan Rosenbaum Reader. Actually, the title is very good. It is "In Dreams Begin Responsibilities." Which is a phrase that comes up a lot in a lot of his reviews, including one of the reviews he read, which is for his 2011 like kind of retrospective review of AI, artificial intelligence. That's how they started it out.
Did you like it?
Yeah, well, he's famously like one of the main like critics at the time who was like loved the film and championed the film. Yeah, and was encouraging people not to look at it as like, in particular the ending, not to look at it as like this like failure that Spielberg has made something that has made this imitation of something that Kubrick would have done so much better, but instead like an actual very like a kind of a perfect fusing of their sensibilities. And well, I think when a lot of people were kind of dismissing the movie, right?
Sure.
A huge part of his reputation and legacy, it seems, has been that every time he gave a take on something that diverged from the popular consensus about that thing, like time completely justifies him.
Yeah.
He's like been able to time and time again sort of show like an alternative understanding that just develops into the main understanding of a work.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think one of the things they sort of brought up, as a bit of context for the AI piece is that like is his review of like Saving Private Ryan, which was right before, and how, he was very negative on the film at the time at a time when a lot of people were saying, oh, this is like a brilliant new, like this is now the definitive like World War II movie, right? Anyway, it was cool to see like, like a living legend of like film criticism and so on, right? And I think there are not a whole lot of critics that I try to read as like pretty regularly, but like that are still active. So like him and like, I don't know, Richard Brody and I don't know who else.
Armand White.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, yes, Armand White. Yeah, that's a little different. For example, if Armand White was at U of T, I would probably go, but I would also be like, I don't know. I just like I would be uncomfortable because
maybe I wouldn't go.
I don't know. You know what I mean? It would be a weird vibe.
I would have gone more readily, like 10 or 15 years ago, but I feel like the way culture has moved and the way he's moved within it has made him seem more odious than
definitely
just like, because Armand White, say what you want, is like fluent in film theory, he maybe is a troll, but he's not like a baseless troll. He has like an academic background. And so a lot of his writing is really interesting, even when it seems preposterous. and is like clearly designed to be provocative. But I guess just the fact that I think he has been dragged along some pretty gnarly social, like conservative ideas. It maybe feels a little bit more odious. Like he was always kind of a Republican, right? But it just feels like the culture war is too vile these days.
Yeah, it's just like the definition of like what a Republican is has shifted, and he is shifted along with it. You know, I don't know. Anyway, that was really cool. Like,
was he cranky? Was Rosenbaum cranky?
I mean, not really. Like a couple of times, like he, you know, some of the questions that the moderator was asking were about some of the, you know, famous figures in film and criticism that he would have encountered, like or you know, had relationships with, like Susan Sontag or Francois Truffaut, and or Godard for that matter. He was a little cranky about Truffaut because he had you know, Rosenbaum had never was saying he never really learned how to speak French, and Truffaut never really learned how to speak English, so he could never really get on they could never really get on the same level. But he would do some editing work for him. But there was a point where he reviewed The Story of Adele H, which is a Truffaut movie I haven't seen, the Isabella Gianni movie, and he didn't like it, and he gave kind of a sarcastic like review with like a sarcastic headline and so on, and he was joking that, because I think he probably knew better than this, but he was joking like, well, I figured because Trudeau didn't read English. Truffaut. Sorry.
Yeah, so, I bet he can't read English. That's for sure.
Fuck Trudeau, man. Yeah. There are all these stickers around the airport that are like, did Trudeau like I did that stickers? You know, have you ever seen those? And there are all the machines where they sell masks. It's like Trudeau, like, and a lot of them are him in his various like you know, offensive costumes, and they're like, you know, I don't know, whatever. All the fuck Trudeau stuff, but anyway, he was joking about Truffaut, like not being able to read his bad review of his movie. But then he did get a letter from Truffaut that was like, I'm very offended, like, you know, and he said those letters are actually published in his like published book of letters. So you can read those there. But anyway, he was really great. But yeah, anyway,
no, I was just thinking about how sad it is that, like, on the one hand, he's detestable, and on the other hand, he's going to get creamed in the election by another sniveling piece of shit. Yeah, like they're both just so awful, you know. Yeah,
we're so fucked.
Yeah,
if you're a non-Canadian listener to this show, and they exist. Yeah, they exist. Maybe in dwindling numbers.
North Carolina fellow. Shout out to that guy.
Yeah.
Owen?
His name wasn't Owen. It's like Bob or something. Fuck. God damn it. God damn it. He's the only person
I'm sorry.
We can't look it up now.
We got
the one who emailed you and you immediately theorized that he was like a deranged psychopath.
Well, no. There were breadcrumbs. He said he was an art thief at one point in his life.
He did say he was an art thief.
So
yeah, but anybody who used Pirate Bay is an art thief.
Yeah,
you wouldn't steal a car.
Jonathan Rosenbaum says it's okay. It's actually good.
That's definitely
in case anybody
definitely the right.
Yeah, in case anybody was hovering their finger over the download torrent button and was like, "What is Jonathan Rosenbaum?" You know, like anyway, it's okay. It's okay to steal.
The people who pirate the most also buy the most physical media.
In my personal experience,
clearly,
that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, our country is screwed. If only there was
we need a savior,
a messiah figure to come to come in. You know,
it was a great Canadian who once sang, "We need a hero to save us. I'm not going to stand here and wait."
Yes, that's that song from the Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Easily could have been for Last Temptation of Christ.
I agree. Well, great movie with a great score.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out.
So
Peter Gabriel.
Pete.
Surprised to see that in the credits.
Oh,
was this your first time watching The Last Temptation of Christ?
Yeah, this was my first time watching it.
Oh, yeah, because the score is very, it's very powerful. I can't imagine forgetting that the score sounds like that. You know what I mean?
Yes. I'm glad you asked that, because I was gonna ask sort of, to start it off, like what our relationship with the film was. So yeah, it was your first time, because I know we had done the Scorsese episode, and
you got me excited.
About it, and
first time watching it, I saw, oddly enough, that I had rated it on Letterboxd, but I never seen it before. I don't know how that happened. Maybe I mistook it for Passion of the Christ. I don't know.
It's possible.
But yeah, it's first time watching it, and like I really enjoy the Scorsese Schrader dyad. I think they're a great team. I was gonna say I didn't know much going in, but like you kind of know what you're gonna get.
Yeah, you know the story.
But I guess we'll get into it later. But I like, and I guess this probably stems from the novel as well. But some of they're not like really diversions, like could you say, like, because in the end, like the story is the story. But I like the little extra flourishes that exist in the film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'd seen it a couple times. The last time I saw it was Easter of 2017, I think, with my family, including my grandma, who I sat through the whole thing, and I think really liked it, which is great. Like you can never really tell sometimes with family members, when you're selecting a movie that is maybe, I wouldn't say this is a challenging movie, but it's also not the easiest movie to swallow necessarily, even if it just comes down to something very trivial like that it's long and that it's a movie about Jesus, which not everybody is into, but it's an easy sell on Easter, right?
Yeah.
But I had seen it before. It was one of the first Criterion DVDs. I think my parents ever got me. I mentioned on the other episode, maybe that, or on the Scorsese episode, that my dog chewed it up, and it was like devastating, because like those are, it was like, this is not just some DVD of the Flintstones or something. This is like serious shit, and he had ripped it all up, but Willem Dafoe's like face on the cover was still there, but like all the red thorns and everything was like totally mangled. Mm-hmm. Anyway, fucking that dog is dead, so who gives a shit? It's all good. And all dogs do not go to heaven.
That one, decidedly
he was
to
okay.
hell.
He was actually pretty neutral, so purgatory. I know that's not how it works. But I do really like this movie, so I had seen it a couple times, and I know you've seen it before a couple times too, Jordan, right?
Yeah, I've talked about it on this podcast.
Yes,
in a sort of way.
You mailed in your voice.
Yeah, where I declared it as one of my, I think, 4 favorite Scorsese films, which this recent rewatch really strengthened It might be my favorite, to be honest. Yeah. I love it.
And we watched it in kind of a. An interesting circumstance too. Is like in Lucas's basement, right? With an like an internet archive, like probably 480p version with burned in Spanish subtitles, which is like, obviously, as someone who kind of is like tries to watch like the best version you can, but also like maybe like 10 years ago would have been really like precious about it, but
make a difference to you?
Yeah,
I think it makes a huge difference.
That's like how
definitely
we watch movies at home,
and
that's how
great.
Movies look to me. All movies,
and that's fine, because I some of the, we talk about the theatrical experience or whatever, or people who are really into like seeing things on 35 millimeter projected film or whatever it is, or like the Oppenheimer thing, there's like 50,000 different formats, you got to choose whatever the best one is, or in my case, like to take 2 and combine them in your mind with the aid of psychedelics to one experience, which is very easy. It's very easy to do.
4DX, the one with the screens on the side,
Screen X. Yeah. But
they just call it Screen X, like, because it got adopted from popular use, but the actual word is tissue.
yeah. Screen X. That's so stupid.
That's the brand name.
That's the brand
it's just
name.
a brand name.
Yeah.
Screen X is just a brand.
It's true. It is just a brand. It's true.
Anyway, sorry for interrupting you.
No,
much.
but that's why you're on the show now.
To interrupt.
To talk. So some of the best experiences of my life watching a movie for the first time are in completely like totally less than ideal circumstances. Like I would talk about the first time I ever watched like Mulholland Drive, which was like on a VHS tape, like in the incorrect aspect ratio, like over a period of like stopping and starting it over like 2 or 3 days or something, because I was too like frightened to see the man behind the diner. You know what I mean? Like, or think about all these movies I would have seen for the first time on like in like the back of a car on like a mini DVD player or something, or whatever, the little car screen thing, or or whatever it is, or on TV. Like the first time I saw The Godfather was probably on TV, like chopped up every fucking 10 or 15 minutes with a commercial, and so the movie's like 7 hours long or something.
I've talked on this podcast about my horrible first viewing experience of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yes.
And I'm also reminded a film that I saw recently for the first time, End of Evangelion. I saw a tweet going around that was like, forget watching End of Evangelion in theaters. I watched it in the way it was meant to be seen, by starting it at 1 a.m. as a teenager on a laptop.
Yeah. Well, yes, my friends, I think it was Matt and Chris. We watched it in Matt's basement, like the like old DVDs, probably, or maybe we torrented it or whatever. Not the older version of torrent was, and like it blew our minds. He's like. Yeah. And I know, well, actually, so you watched it for the first time too in theaters, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I saw it at the Paradise with friend of the pod, past and future guest Catherine.
Yeah,
and she was kind of my guide.
Yeah,
because obviously I had a lot of questions coming out of it. Well, not really. We just kind of spoke about it a bit, and it was great. That was my only time seeing it, and the only time I saw the series was on Netflix on my big old TV I'm sitting in front of, so I didn't have the kind of lo-fi experience.
I was gonna ask because I know it was both your first time seeing the film and having recently seen the series. So what do you think? What do you want to say? I was gonna ask a question first.
I thought we were rolling into Last Temptation.
We are, but I have a really quick question. Sorry,
okay,
because they're the same movie basically, right?
Yeah, they are similar.
It was very Easter appropriate. I watched it on Good Friday.
I just have one question. Do you think it's better, or maybe it's a would you rather? Do you think it's better that we all turn into goo together, or do you think it's better that we're individual people, even though sometimes it's more painful that way?
I think Shinji makes the right decision at the end of the film.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To disaggregate the world from
being goo,
gelatinous mass.
Yeah,
but we still have the option, if we have the willpower, to like reassemble our human forms and emerge from the goo and live in the new red world.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Shinji decides at the end of the movie to say, no, we have to be our individual selves.
Yeah,
and we have to take the risk. Even if it's painful
and embarrassing, or disgusting, right? As Asuka says.
Totally. And I do believe, like, I think the ending of the series is kind of a bit more quote unquote positive or optimistic. This one I think still is like a, hey little boy, life is worth living kind of thing, but it makes a really strong argument for being goo. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes a good counter argument. It makes a stronger counter argument than the show did.
Yeah, maybe if we're talking about what we watched recently, we should save, because I just feel like there's a lot to say about End of Evangelion.
Sorry,
but I agree with you, Alex, that the film ultimately is like really grounded in just like the fact that it loves this pitiful little boy.
Yeah,
and that's beautiful.
Yeah. There's a little Shinji in all of us,
Yeah.
Well, and that, our mothers love us despite how pitiful little boys we are, like our mothers will do anything for us, even entrust the evolution of the human species, like to us when we might be like horribly ill-equipped and afraid of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was a really, really sweet film, sweet Easter film.
Yeah. I mean, it is, but so is Last Temptation of Christ. Hey, this is Ben here. Perhaps a case of divine intervention or something like that. The next little bit, there's some interference. I'm trying to cut around it, so I apologize if it's difficult to follow, but it's better than hearing the awful interference noise.
we were talking about watching a Internet Archive with burned in subtitles, and just something that you had mentioned earlier. Whenever they called Jesus Master, the subtitle was Maestro.
Maestro. Yeah, they called Jesus Maestro many times in the film.
That's unfortunate.
And I was thinking about Bradley Cooper just a little bit, because it, I don't know maybe if it's not going to happen at this point in his career, but at some point, couldn't you see him playing Jesus?
Yes.
In the kind of Jesus movies that this movie is not. Like this movie and Gospel According to St. Matthew and other,
like the Jesus of Nazareth, like Franco Zeffirelli,
the George Stevens, whatever, the full white Jesus movies where he's like scrubbed clean, of any mortal failings or whatever, So
wait, was this your first time watching the movie, Lucas?
This was my first time. Yeah.
Nice.
Is this how many Martin Scorsese?
Any off the top of the head? That's pretty much it, I think. Jordan has just asked Lucas how many Martin Scorsese movies he's seen.
I have no idea what he has made. I listened to that whole episode, and The Last Temptation is the only one I really remember, because I listen for the jokes. I don't know shit about movies.
Nice.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, we're slowly transitioning away from talking about movies at the show anyway, to just talking about our lives, and cum and farts and dicks, like all of the popular Joe Rogan-y. I was gonna say Adam Carolla. What's his fucking name? Adam Friedland show. Yeah, of course we will drop in the clip of Paul Schrader and on the Adam Friedland show talking.
He was on it.
Willem Dafoe's big penis.
Yeah.
So Willem is up there, and he says, "Marty, he can't come down. He's up there. You have to lower the cross to get him down." I said, "Marty, you got to fix this.
My penis is too big."
Marty, because it's hanging out. And Marty says, "That's wardrobe." So they get the ladder, and wardrobe comes by and fixes it.
If he is the son of God, he should have like an absolute monster, no?
Well, it depends, your particular religious inclination.
Well, I'm a Jewish man. Yeah. The papists, it is a little bit having a guy up there on their thing. It's a little bit gay, no?
Everything is a little bit gay.
Lucas, can I run a couple titles by you? Just a couple of the famous ones. The Wolf of Wall Street.
I've heard of that. I have not seen it.
Goodfellas.
Yeah, I think so. When I was like a teenager, I decided I was going to try and get into movies, and I went on the IMDb list, and I watched the top maybe 10 or 20.
So you watched Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah.
Martin Scorsese's Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
That's as far as I got though, and then yeah.
Have you seen Taxi Driver?
No. I downloaded it when
nice.
I was like 15, but it's still sitting there.
You still have the same file that from when you were 15. You might need to. You could probably update it just to see.
Yeah.
No, maybe it's.
I feel like you want that vintage. People are all about vintage these days.
That can fetch a mean price on the market.
Yeah, they showed us like a 16 millimeter print of it at the review. I really wanted to go, but I was not free because I bet it would look like shit, like Taxi Driver. Yeah.
Do you think watching that file would be really satisfying? Just like finally opening it, watching
it. Do it.
I think that would be really satisfying.
Yeah, it's on my parents' tower desktop computer, which was sitting in their basement for a few years, and then I took it, and it's sitting in my basement because I thought I don't know, I wanted all my old LimeWire files and
viruses.
Stuff. Yeah, for memories,
all the good stuff.
So maybe I'll dig it up. I don't think I will.
You should watch it. It's a good movie.
Yeah.
That's so sweet, though. I wish I still had my first PC tower desktop computer and just turn it on and I bet you would just explode.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder what mysteries would be on the old family computer. Probably nothing good. Yeah.
I took a lot of notes while watching last night. And if I don't know if anybody has a good idea on how to get into a discussion of this film, but for me, like the thing that I come back to when I think about it, and the thing that just when watching it last night, just I found so captivating about it, is just the relationship between Jesus and Judas in this movie.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And how the film really seems structured around two-handers between Defoe and Keitel, where you'll get a decent chunk of gospel recreation scenes done in a kind of style that is in like with the way the book, I guess, kind of tells the story is like a humanist depiction of Christ, right? So you'll get scenes where he's doing like the Sermon on the Mount, but he's flailing and sucks at it, you know?
Yeah.
But so you get recreations.
He's losing them, like, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although that contains, I think, so in the Sermon on the Mount, when he's talking about you don't need food, I'm going to fill your souls, right? There's this dialectic between Judas and Jesus throughout the whole film, where Judas is trying to tell him it starts with the body, right?
Yeah.
We need to overthrow the Romans. We need men. We need to fight. And Jesus is saying, if we overthrow the Romans without changing our souls, we'll just replace the Romans with the same thing, right?
We are Harkonnens.
Yeah. But
I mean, it's true, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, right? Because of how Dune... it is funny because something that Lucas was thinking about last night, and I would be so curious to hear you talk more about this, was that it has like a Star Wars vibe. And what's just the Dune thing is funny because Dune obviously is like a huge influence on Star Wars, but Star Wars takes Dune's narrative, Dune's warnings about Messiah figures, and just plays it completely straight.
Yeah.
Like Luke is just a straightforward chosen one, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny to think about the way that Dune is looking at the Christ figure and trying to make it complicated, and the way that Last Temptation is doing something similar. Although I think they come to very different conclusions about their central characters, obviously.
For sure.
Like Last Temptation is like a Christ-affirming movie to me. It loves and like deeply is reverential towards Christ.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, quickly, I'm going to do the thing we're supposed to do, where we tell people what the movie's about, as if they like don't know anything about it.
Yes.
That's a producer Nico note.
Nice.
Nico, well, this was based on a book by Nikos Kazantzakis from 1955, Greek writer. It's written by Paul Schrader, directed by Martin Scorsese, 1988. And basically, it is his film about like the life of Jesus, but I guess specifically the section that everybody does, like it's not exclusively the Passion, but what do they call it? Like it's the New Testament, basically, right?
The Gospel.
The Gospel, yeah. That's the word I was looking for. And all of the familiar beats. I think I don't need to tell people what happens in the Gospel, but all of those things occur. But I think the main sort of difference is that it views Jesus as a man, right? And the difficulty that he has being both man and God, and up to the kind of famous sort of ending of the film, the last sort of like kind of 40 minutes or so of the film, where he is crucified and he is the titular Last Temptation, where Satan encounters Satan on the cross, and Satan,
in the guise of a guardian angel.
In the guise of a guardian angel,
played by a young Florence Welch.
Yes. Nobody knows that, right?
Yeah, nobody knows that.
But do the math; it works out. The timing, it all works out. Basically, she lets him live the life of like a mortal man, like a man who was not the Messiah and was not crucified on the cross, and he and this is part of the controversy, which we'll get into after we talk about the kind of the main part of the movie, but where he fathers children with Mary Magdalene and another woman also named Mary. He had a type, and then and grows an old man and has a family and so on. Mm-hmm. And only to then, I think, with the help of some familiar friends, to decide that in fact, he does want to be the Messiah. He is ready to make the sacrifice and to die on the cross and come back, as a God. Yeah.
And I think what I liked about it was the kind of like these additions of the kind of like temptations that he faces, throughout the movie, because watching the story again after basically seeing the same thing in Superstar.
We did watch that. Yeah.
It's like, we're only 2 movies into this franchise and I'm already kind of getting a bit like Jesus fatigued,
Yeah.
And I think it's also because like growing up, we're all pretty familiar with these gospel stories and I'm not super interested in the tale, I like these humanist elements that Schrader and Scorsese bring to it and this kind of like temptation structure to the story a bit too, with the Last Temptation almost being like the final boss or something like that, know. It's like I think that adds like a new dimension to it that I liked. I think the one thing that overall I just didn't really like jive with was like, through no fault of the filmmakers, but was like just kind of the story of Jesus, you know what I mean? Like he's kind of just like I don't know, like it's he's got a bit of like a Messiah complex, this guy. He's like kind of a dick.
Maybe a bit.
Yeah, like, and I can't even believe that we're going to see the same story essentially again, but
not quite the same story.
Yeah. And I was about to spoil what it was, but like, it's inevitable and it's probably obvious, but like,
yeah, it's come up already.
Anyway, yeah, like the story's just kind of rote at this point, but I like the kind of like new life they bring into it and the like the temptation set pieces, if you will.
That's interesting. Yeah. I don't have that issue. I think I actually really like Jesus movies, including the ones that I think this movie is so, to whatever extent Scorsese is consciously thinking of this, but the movies that the Jesus movies he would have grown up watching that are so stodgy and like the biblical epics that would play on TV every Easter and every Christmas or whatever, like King of Kings or like The Greatest Story Ever Told or whatever, those things that where the portrayals of Jesus are the
infallible.
Yeah, completely infallible. Yeah,
this is way more interesting.
Yeah, completely like and also literally like free of any dirt or grime. Yeah. Like this like glowing white robed, blue eyed like Adonis kind of like wandering through the desert, like doing everything right, and then sacrificing himself willingly, without much of a thought. And I would say, and Scorsese is a huge fan of Gospel According to St. Matthew, that, which is a different film, definitely. But I like watching even those old movies I like the story of the Gospels, and I get a lot out of it, even when it's told very plainly and very vanilla. But I think that's what makes this movie so much more interesting, right?
Totally. Yeah. We're going to have to butt heads on that one.
I do think like my familiarity with the gospel story almost took away from my ability to like interpret, I guess, the deeper like messages they're trying to convey about the story and so on, because I found I was like projecting a lot of like my just like understanding of the story onto what was happening, which kind of bothers me because there's like a disclaimer at the beginning that's like, this is not based on the Gospels, and then they proceed to like tell the gospel story but with their own like, I don't know, weird twist on it. And I feel like it would be maybe more effective to like create distance from that story, or like to, I don't know, explore what they're trying to get at outside of that context, because to me it's like they're just doing like a shitty version of like this story that like, oh yeah, Jesus is like, I don't know, he's like a charismatic like New Yorker or whatever. Yeah.
He's a carpenter, but he's making the crosses for crucifixion.
Jesus was a cross maker.
That was a great little detail, I think, that they added, that he's making the crosses and stuff. Mm-hmm. Or is that in the original book? Is that in the Bible? I don't know. I figured.
I think one of the things that disclaimer, which is from the epigraph of the novel or the prologue.
Yeah, and from directly from the author himself, right?
Yeah, so that one of the things that kind of, to me, sets up the framing that it gives me when I watch the film is like an understanding that this is a exploration of the spiritual journey that like as humans and Christians people are undergoing, right? And so I think one of the things that I get out of the Last Temptation of Christ, one of the things that I get out of Last Temptation that I find so compelling and moving is the portrait of Jesus as a figure that like people can aspire to. It builds a character that is deeply human. So many of the struggles that we see him undergoing reflect that nature of him being like the Son of God on earth among men, right? Rather than the divine Messiah, which is like how I think a lot of people's preferred interpretation. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is that framing says that like that's fine. This is a movie about a spiritual struggle, and like it sees Christ as like a nexus point that can kind of tease out a lot of questions about faith and humanity. Mm-hmm. And it's not meant to be like a depiction of the canonical Jesus in that way.
And I think that blurb at the beginning probably shielded them from any controversy.
Yeah, it saved their ass.
Yeah, naturally, yeah, of course.
I was reading about
what's the purpose of like I don't know, using maybe this is not really a critique of the film and more of the book, but like I don't know, employing the like gospel story, but then saying, "Oh, actually, we're not actually talking about that." Like, it seems.
Well, sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Over you. That's all I have to say.
Okay. I think what it's doing is using this really familiar terrain by going over these stories that are so deeply embedded in culture, in Judeo-Christian culture. You have a template that you can work from to subvert and to question and to challenge people's understandings of things. And like by for example, having Jesus deliver the Sermon on the Mount and it be met with like kind of a mixed reception, right? It gives you an understanding that in his time, Christ was a revolutionary figure who confused and upset and seemed strange to people, right? And that this kind of revolutionary idea is like fundamentally antisocial in some way. It's like calling for what is revolution, right? Like the overthrowing of the status quo. That being first of all delivered awkwardly, and second of all received like with like a mixed response. I think it just kind of demonstrates something that feels a lot more real to like the lived experience of people than something like if you watch the The Franco Zeffirelli one is the one I was thinking. I've never seen The Greatest Story Ever Told, but gosh, those Jesus of Nazareth VHS tapes were constantly being shown to us in class.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen all of that, but I've seen part of it. And I mean, I actually kind of like the Nicholas Ray's King of Kings is kind of... I haven't seen Cecil B. DeMille's King of Kings, but that one's kind of interesting. Or at least it's just like a well-made movie. But... No, I know what you mean. Like it's and I think a lot of people who like this movie, you know, and maybe as you're saying, Lucas, like don't necessarily have that relationship with the Gospels and haven't necessarily made or had as strong of a connection like with the biblical Jesus, and maybe don't understand the biblical Jesus, so that when they see this movie, they're it's so much more easy to relate to this Jesus, and like through the struggle that is like easier to understand. You know what I mean?
I also think that if Christ is humanity's conduit, like a reconciliation towards God through Christ, then I think using this familiar story and tearing at the fabric of it to try to reflect it on humanity and like our own spiritual struggles, I think is like a really actually like necessary and beautiful kind of way to adapt the Gospels. I
agree, but I don't know. Maybe I'm beating a dead horse here, but it doesn't claim to be like... They have a disclaimer that says this is not the Gospels, right? So I feel that, like, how can you can't really say that if they're from the beginning saying this is not the Gospel, and then like it doesn't make sense to compare this to other Jesus movies. It doesn't make sense to compare it to like anything else if it's not claiming to be of that, right? Like, anyways, I don't want to.
No, this is the discussion of the film.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's like so interesting to think about. I think that dissonance is part of the texture of the movie, right?
Absolutely.
Watching something that you think you understand and seeing it not quite play out the way you think it's going to, even if I think it gets to the conclusions that are like necessitated by faith and Christianity, right? Like Jesus ultimately is the Messiah in the last temptation of Christ, but you know, like there is stuff there that is decidedly non-canonical. Obviously the sequence of him living, it really makes me think of this one Star Trek episode, but anyways, it's called The Inner Light, and Captain Picard, a probe shows up at the Enterprise and nobody knows what it is, and then Picard gets knocked out cold, and while he's unconscious, he lives an entire life on this planet with this alien civilization. And as he's living his life, he learns, I'm like a scientist here. I'm working on something to help save this civilization because the sun is going to explode and I can't do it. And the civilization dies. And then when he comes to, he gets like a little message from the probe that says like, we just wanted someone to remember, I'm going to cry. It's a beautiful, beautiful episode of television.
I do want to watch that.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Have you seen it?
No, but
it's widely considered like one of the 5 best ever Star Trek episodes.
I'm a big sucker for those types of stories.
Yeah.
Like that sort of type of...
Very Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I actually do really like Jacob's Ladder.
But yeah, so there's like all these and I think that's like a huge part of what that disclaimer is signaling towards is like, you're going to see stuff that's not representations of what the Gospels are, right? We're not claiming in this film, we're not like claiming that sequence of the Last Temptation is like is a real representation of the Gospels.
Yeah. But I totally get that. But then I think, is it fair to compare it to other Jesus movies that are faithful to the Gospels? Because is it comparing the same story? Like, what are you comparing?
So if you compare it to Jesus of Nazareth, for example, which when you read about theology, like Christian apologetics, and you discover all these words. There's like a really beautiful word for what it means to try to tell the story of Christ by combining elements from all four Gospels. I forgot what the word is, but Jesus of Nazareth is that, right? So like
Matthew, Mark, and Luke are the synoptic Gospels, right? Because they're telling very much the same story. And the phrase, it seems, when you're attempting to tell them all as one in one image or in one story or in one whatever it is gospel harmony.
Having the nativity, having having all the miracles, as well as having like certain lines that only appear in certain Gospels, and trying to do like a supercut of the four Gospels in one film, and plays it extremely faithfully and straight. And so that to me, like I said before, stands as the most kind of monumental work that does something like that. But then you have something like The Passion of the Christ, which also claims to be like a true representation of the Gospels. And I would say, like, that's a film that depicts the psychology of the filmmaker making it in like such a deep and strange way, right? And I guess like you have to understand on some level that like creating works of art based on the Gospels is always going to include all this extra information, right? It's going to include the information of, let's say, even just like the discipline that the artist, the tradition that they're rooted in, right? So like a surrealist painter versus a classical versus a romantic, right? Like are all going to depict Christ in these different. Am I eluding your point here?
No, I get it. I think it's just it's going in circles, because then it's like, I don't know. Why have the disclaimer if this is your interpretation of it through your artistic lens? Like it's just like, anyways.
Well, so
I think we should move on.
I do think from what I was reading that one of the reasons that's in the movie is because there was a lot of controversy in the production of the film.
Yeah, I figured that much. Anyways, yeah.
No. I think this is like a very interesting discussion to have. I don't know if it is. I don't know. I mean, whoever the fuck listens to the show. I mean, most of the people who listen to the show are in this room anyway. But no, I don't think that's like a trivial point. I think that is, like you were saying, like that this is the discussion of the movie. You know, before, and as you were sort of alluding to, Jordan, like while it was being made, it was already being called like irreverent and offensive, and to do an adaptation of the gospel that was not that deviated and that had its own interpretation.
I think in particular having like a depiction of Christ engaged in sex.
And having children, and having being succumbing to like carnal desire and pleasure and things like that,
which is so silly in retrospect.
Well, it's I don't think it's. I mean, it's very easy to dismiss the critics of the film. But I can understand that. I can understand someone finding it to be blasphemous or finding it to be irreverent. But to me, like this is I mean, I don't know if it is fair to compare it to other Christ movies that are playing it much more straightforward or playing it very reverently. But to me, this is the most like reverent depiction of Christ, one of the most reverent depictions of Christ in film, because it's a film that I think loves Jesus and seeks to portray that love through like portraying the flaws of what it must have been like for, I don't know, maybe the phrase like a historical Jesus is kind of like not appropriate, but do you know what I mean? Like what would it have been like to have to be an actual person at that time who is having these visions and having God's voice guide you?
Can I draw one more comparison? Because I'm just thinking about the gospel according to Matthew, right?
Yeah.
Which is faithful to the text rendition of the Gospel of Matthew, right?
Yeah.
All the dialogue spoken comes from the Gospel of Matthew. All the actions and events that occur as depicted in the Gospel of Matthew. And I adore that movie. It's not, to me, reverent towards Christ nearly the same way that the Passion of the Christ is. And
Temptation.
And Pasolini was an atheist, right?
Yeah.
And I think that comes through in his depiction. And his depiction of Christ is like as an organizer.
Yeah, a Marxist.
As a Marxist,
Yeah.
yeah. And his depiction of the Pharisees and the Romans is as like a fascist, is like a reflection of his experience with fascism in Italy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the moments of that film that like move me the most deeply are the moments when Christ is crucified and you see the power, like the powerlessness of ordinary people up against like a police state, right?
Yeah.
It's utterly heartbreaking to watch when you see his family and friends gathered to like bear witness to his suffering with no recourse, right? Whereas in the Last Temptation, the crucifixion scene is like ultimately we see this kind of like struggle of man to conclude that like there must be like faith that the Messiah, that like Christ has to be the Messiah, right? So like once he's crucified, we get this long sequence whose like conclusion is ultimately that like despite all of the misgivings and destruction, that like mankind is redeemable through Christ, right? It's like a beautiful to me in terms of like its spirituality, just like a gorgeous way to impart like that idea.
And I would also say too that it's a very like, you know, I think Scorsese at this time was, you know, still kicking his cocaine habit and getting into self-help, right? And this is a very self-help Jesus, because essentially what it's saying is at the end of the day, you know, others, you know, won't have faith in you unless you have faith in yourself. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, at the end when he says, I want to be the Messiah, I want to, you know, die on the cross and be resurrected and so on, you know, that's for me the daily kind of affirmation you have to have in the mirror when you get up in the morning. You know, you got to say like, yeah, you know, like I want to
be the Messiah.
I want to be the Messiah. Yeah. Like, fuck yeah. I'm getting pumped up to go answer phones at the hotel. Right. You know, and in a sense, every day I am someone's Messiah when I help them alter a reservation, give them free parking, whatever it is. Right. It was awarded Employee of the Month today. That's right.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Congratulations!
Pretty big
Congratulations.
deal. Not like hotel wide, but like it just in the office, you know.
Nice.
And it was fudged. Like they just like they had to give it to some. It was my turn. Yeah. It was still very nice.
You earned it.
I got a $20 gift card.
Nice.
You had to spend a night out in the desert where you were tempted by like 4 visions of Satan.
Yeah, fire, snake, lion.
When the lion shows up with
Aslan.
Harvey Keitel's voice.
Yeah, for a second I thought it was Scorsese, but it's just because they sound so similar.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, Jordan, like it does end in the same place. You know, it ends with a reverent perspective of Christ, you know, doing the right thing. And like, which is silly to say, but
1 year later, they're friends. Like Spike and Marty are friends.
It's all connected.
So
like, what I appreciated was the more like humanist, circuitous route it took to get to that same end place. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I find so like enriching about it, right? Is that
and that's what makes like, you know, reading about the controversy just seem kind of like strange in retrospect, because it's I think by portraying him, you know, like that and then making the choice to kind of step up to the plate, to use like excessively colloquial terms for Jesus, but like I think that makes it, you know, more reverent or like more.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, and I that's why it's so tempting or so easy to just dismiss the critics of it. But I have to try to sort of understand that mindset, I wasn't raised Catholic or even particularly religious, but you have to understand that sort of mindset of taking the word, the gospel, like
as gospel,
like word by word, like this is what Christ was like, and this is exactly what happened, and these are the lessons that I'm supposed to get from this book, without room for interpretation in the same way that maybe other religions have, but not just like how you live your life, but the idea of the lack of room for interpretation within a piece of art, which I find difficult to.
That's almost blasphemous.
I find hard to get into that mindset. Do you know what I mean?
In 2011, I was interning at this social media site called Wattpad, right? Do you know Wattpad?
That sounds vaguely familiar.
That does sound familiar.
It's pretty, it's like you write fanfic and upload it, you know? And so I was interning, and when Jennifer Lawrence was cast as Katniss in the Hunger Games, I remember seeing people get upset because she, like most of the photos people could find of her, were she had blonde hair in them, and Katniss has brown hair, right?
Yeah.
People don't want their books changed.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's true. It's true.
That's how you end up with people like protesting Buddy Christ and Dogma, among other things. But like,
I mean, like, the Hunger Games ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, in next to the Bible, is meaningless, right? So
totally.
Well,
yeah. So I get the I think it's, if you're depicting a religious figure in like a popular media like film, it's a big swing, right?
It's a huge undertaking, obviously, but I guess I like don't understand the kind of rigorous like line, that can't be crossed. Do you know what I mean? Like that mindset.
I think people who are bred into the tradition, I think, just have a very narrow way of understanding, and don't actually think about the, I don't know, spiritual dimensions of things. I in my own experience, even being brought up into the routine of tradition and understanding of what all of this is so different from I don't know, even just a literary approach to reading the Bible, or understanding or thinking about what this is actually telling you beyond just these are little, I wanted to say limericks. These are little narratives I have in my head, little poems or whatever.
I think another thing that is just a massive part of this is the fact that the church is a hugely powerful institution that organizes the way people behave and think around this kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So when the church itself gets involved and says this book is heretical, this film is blasphemous, people are just going to fall in line, right? That
was my other thing, is if he's claiming to be a Catholic, then I mean, as a Catholic, you need to respect the authority of the church. That's a foundational thing. So I don't know.
Well, they love him now.
Yeah.
I mean, he
just hung out with the Pope to talk about his next Jesus movie.
Yeah, he's making another Jesus movie. He has also made several more religious movies after this. One of which I think, I don't know how many of the same types of people who are upset about this movie would have actually seen Silence.
Amazing
right?
film.
But a movie that is, I think that is, if me as a I guess whatever irreligious person generally, it takes a 2.5 hour Martin Scorsese religious epic to make me kind of get in touch with the idea of spirituality, or make me feel the things that I haven't felt as a non-spiritual person since I was a child. That's so beautiful, and it just kind of when you look at the reception to this movie, like obviously I know 1988 is like a different time and a different landscape, and the power that the church had in society it was certainly different than it is today. I think maybe more. I don't know what the crunch the numbers are, but I think generally more people were more religious back then, or at least they were more open about it, right? And I think the church had a lot more power back then than it does now, right? Like over North American, like
Sure.
popular consciousness.
Yeah.
So.
I think you're talking about such broad, like amounts of people and such broad concepts that like, where does the church have power and how does the church exercise it is like maybe more meaningful, you know? But Christian American culture is extreme, right? Like it's pretty strong. I can't stop thinking about the thing you said about how if you're a Catholic, you have to respect the authority of the church, right? Not because I think it's like a surprising thing to say. It's more just something that I haven't thought about in a long time. I think that's because like my Catholicism, like my understanding of Catholicism and like rejection of Catholicism, it just became so, I think it's maybe easy to take for granted how unpleasant Catholic doctrine is when you're not in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what the Protestant Reformation was all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah. These are my people. Yeah. Had enough of that.
Do you guys so I was reading that like Harvey Keitel got really panned.
Okay, this is my sorest spot about this movie.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I thought he was fine. Like
he's more than fine.
I think he's magnificent.
Yeah.
He's great. He's like a New York Jerry Curl Judas, and it's like similar to Superstar as well. Like he starts like, you know, pissed off with Jesus. He's like, what are you doing? He's actually tasked with assassinating him at one point, but then like, you know, winds up drinking the Kool-Aid, and then the betrayal is like all part of Jesus's plan as well. But I didn't see anything like wrong with it at all, really. Like, you know, and you read about how he just got like dragged through the mud, and it was just completely unwarranted.
I think part of it, like listening to Scorsese talk about it, and in the context of his career, and the kind of filmmaker that he was thought of back then as opposed to today, that this was seen as a very big swing for him and something that was maybe like pretentious or maybe outside of his wheelhouse or whatever. And so then I think when people see the New York character actors and the accents and so on, like they get stuck in that like of idea of what Scorsese movies should be, which are mostly crime films, you know, or whatever from this point. And they see that and they get hung up on it, and they think it's like, you know, that was the big joke where it was like, oh, everyone's like fucking talking like from Brooklyn, like, hey, fuck you, Jesus. But the movie's not like that at all.
It's not.
It's, you know.
And I thought it could afford to be a bit more like that too, just to be funny. But
to me, it's actually Harry Dean Stanton is the one that feels the most like.
I thought he was great too.
Oh, he's amazing, but his accent is the one that feels the funniest.
The one that we laughed at the most was the Zippity guy, which is Irvin Kershner, who very much is like just talking like a regular.
What's the matter with you?
Yeah.
Come on.
I think it's funny. I think Andre Gregory is funny in it from My Dinner with Andre.
Of course.
Because he's got that very distinctive voice where he talks like this, and he's kind of like Jesus, like I'm John the Baptist, and it's perfect because, you know, he sounds like John
the Baptist.
His brain has been fried. Yeah.
So the New Yorker accents, and then like the desert music, as we talked about, or you had talked about from Dune. Same idea. It was just like, it was so, I don't know.
At a time when like quote unquote world music was like a very popular, like
and Peter Gabriel is like the guy.
And he had his like, there was like a record label specifically that like put out like world music, you know. And I mean, the score is really good.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's especially the percussion that is like, if it's when it's just the voice doing the thing, you know, then it's like very cliche. Having those like 80s drums happening at the same time is like, what the fuck? And you're getting that with like desert landscapes and people in robes. It's very, to me, it just kind of is actually like in a similar sort of way, like represents the same dissonance that you get watching the film as someone familiar with the Gospels, right? Where you're just like, there's something off about this that I feel kind of unmoored in this story where I would usually feel on very firm feet, right? Having the music contain elements that you're familiar with and combine them with elements that you wouldn't expect. And
it's like tribal syncopated drum patterns, but they sound they have that like 80s synthetic sound to them.
The gated reverb thing.
The baptism scene, I guess, when he goes to see John the Baptist, and I don't know, there's like all these drums happening, and there's the people that are almost
everyone's like twitching
hypnotized kind of, and I love that. And it was so the music was so compelling there. And then they cut it out when they're having their little like moment. That was great.
It does that a few times too. Like obviously at the end on the cross, and
when the bomb is going off, all of the sound goes off.
Exactly.
Did you say the bomb?
The bomb.
Yeah.
When they're testing the bomb and it explodes
and the sound goes out.
The sound all cuts out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
The bomb.
The bomb.
The bomb.
Yeah.
The testing the bomb they would use in the theater.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
That's crazy. I didn't realize it was that extreme.
Yeah,
I thought it was like somebody
died.
drove a car into it, but it's like somebody set off like a. Anyways,
I'll
talk about it.
I mean,
but I just don't want to move past the Harvey Keitel thing.
No.
If I can get a moment,
like.
So obviously, right? The Golden Raspberry is a heinous institution, a blot upon the face of humanity. Anti-art.
Yeah.
So the fact that Harvey Keitel won the Golden Raspberry for Worst Supporting Actor, ultimately meaningless. But it does like show the ambient wisdom at the time, and the way the film was received was like to mock a lot of the casting and the accents and stuff like that. Which just to me is like people have like a visceral response to texture rather than like, and it's fair, right? Like sometimes you need to get acclimated to something that might seem strange before you can actually take in the substance of it.
Another version of the problem we have going to see older movies at rep screenings, right?
It is actually.
Yeah, it's the same basic thing.
Yeah, when you see an old movie with an audience that isn't used to like the rhythm and style, their response to being uncomfortable and to find is just laugh.
Yeah,
right?
Because they're like, well, it's one of two things. It's either I don't really understand how to watch the movie, or that it's like old and tacky and funny. Mm-hmm. And people are much more willing to err on that side. They don't want to admit that, like, okay, maybe it like takes a bit of work to like understand something like this. Mm-hmm. You know, which is not to say that's always the case. Like sometimes something is just an aesthetic error, right? But not in this case, I don't think. Yeah.
One of the things that I remember about being in religious institutions all my life was people questioning what the meaning of Judas's role in the story of Jesus is. Yeah. Right? That if like how can you have like a true betrayal if the plan is for Christ to sacrifice himself? Like isn't that just part of the plan, right? Mm-hmm. Judas's sort of cultural, the heritage that he's given us in culture is of the traitor, you know. I remember being told that, like, canonically the Vatican will only recognize that, like, one soul is in hell and it's Judas's, right?
Yeah.
And the ultimate kind of question, like the perplexing thing of, like, what does it mean to be a sinner in the eyes of God if God knows you better than you know yourself, right? And so Judas's sin, right, Judas's betrayal has to in some way be, like, set forth by God.
Mm-hmm.
And that the way that is woven into the story of the film, where Judas is introduced as this, like, righteous, angry zealot whose goal is to overthrow the Romans and reestablish freedom for the Jews, right? And sees Jesus as a means to an end. If Jesus can inspire people and lead a revolution, then he can work with them. But as he tells Jesus, if he strays even an inch from his revolution, then he'll just kill him.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, that moment when Jesus is asking Judas finally, like, you have to betray me for, like, the sacrifice so that I can redeem the sins of mankind, right? It's like the ultimate salvation for the Jews, right? And Judas says, no, I can't kill you. I'm not going to do it, because they've grown it deeply in their love for each other. But what Jesus is saying is that the revolution isn't going to be violent. We're not taking up arms and overthrowing the Romans. We're having a revolution of the spirit, right? And the fact that Judas refuses to kill him, even though that statement is the most, like, he's not straying an inch from Judas's revolution, right? He's rejecting it outright at that point, right? So, like I was saying earlier, the film to me is structured around these conversations that those two characters have, where you'll get, like, a kind of an intimate scene between the two of them having a dialogue, talking things out, trying to figure out where they stand on the question between, like, the revolution of the spirit versus the revolution of the body, right? And then you get, like, gospel interpretation stuff, and then you'll get another scene where the two of them are again engaged in trying to discuss this conflict. And the way that Defoe plays Jesus is he's subject to this kind of psychological torment. He's confused, but ultimately, like a person of faith. He trusts in God, and he trusts in what he has to do. And it's, like, really beautiful. It's, like, a great performance. Judas, though, Harvey Keitel, he's doing something that I think is, like, so complicated and layered, and he does it all with so much simplicity on screen, right? Where his character has to negotiate the need for freedom and for peace among a subjugated people. He needs to negotiate his values with this awakening that he's having over the power of this man who he's starting to believe is the Messiah, and whose mission isn't violent revolution, right? And it's just heartbreaking by the time you get to the scene where he's experiencing his last temptation, and he's lived a full life, and Judas comes and confronts him as an old man and says, like, why, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you sacrifice yourself like we said you would? Like, you can't imagine how much I loved you, right? And, like, and now I see you like this, and it breaks my heart, right? It's the best. It's the best stuff in the movie.
Yeah.
I think, like, I think this might be my favorite Scorsese film just for that performance. Like, I think it's unbelievable. and it's so annoying that people thought it was like a joke.
Yeah, and it's almost like people don't want to complicate their idea of what they've been told Judas is representing. And when you don't see Judas betray Jesus and then be conflicted and then hang himself like he does in a lot of the other movies.
Sometimes like in the Gospels, in one of the Gospels, his bowels explode out of him.
Right.
It's like he doesn't just get what he deserves. He's like utterly disgraced in death. Right.
Yeah. But in this movie, there's, as you've said, watching the relationship develop and watching the love grow between them, and the arguments that they have, the understanding that they have, the kiss that they share, that you don't see in any other version.
It's typically a kiss on the cheek.
Right. But this is a full on like
mouth
I love you, and mouth
with
to mouth.
Tongue.
Yeah. But then to have the last appearance of Judas, not be swinging from the tree, guts bursting out, to have him come up and again to stress the daily affirmation angle, to get Judas up off his ass, get him on the fucking exercise bike. You know what I mean? Like to the point where he's literally crawling from his deathbed out into the burning hell of the Jerusalem being sacked by the Romans, to get up onto the hill to yell to God, is so beautiful. Yeah. And it does bother me. I don't know what it was like to be a moviegoer at that time. I can even you look on Letterboxd or wherever and you see reviews and everybody kind of has to mention like, Judas with the Brooklyn accent. Like, I get it. I get that it's funny. Like it is a little funny. Right. Mm-hmm. But the performance, it's an incredible performance.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just looking, there's this moment when, Judas says to Jesus, like, I need to talk to you about that thing you said the other day about turning the other cheek if someone hits you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the only people who can turn the other cheek if someone hits you, you have to be either an angel or a dog. Mm-hmm. And I'm a man. Like, if someone hits me, I'm going to hit them back, right? Yeah. It's just like this. Yeah, like love versus action, right? You have a scene, like a couple scenes later after he's baptized, when Jesus is like developing in his ideas on like what it means for him to be the Messiah, and he says, John baptized with water, and they killed him. Now I baptize with fire, right? Yeah. And it's like the influence that this relationship with Judas is having on him, right? Like the different ideas on what it means to be a leader. But that scene earlier, it's really like the first, it's actually the second big scene that they have together. And Jesus says, Judas, I'm afraid, stay with me. Yeah. And he sleeps with his head on Judas's chest, and that the camera like rolls over them. I just find it like, because after their conversation, and at this point in the film, you can like you know where they stand with each other. Basically, that like Judas doesn't think he can trust this guy, but is going to see where things are going to go, and ultimately is still committed to like the ideas of violent revolution. And Jesus is just like helpless because feels like he's either going mad or is on a mission from God, right? And he just needs somebody that he can hold on to. And say what you want about Judas, but he's like stubborn. His feet are planted in reality, right? He's like a pragmatist, right? Mm-hmm. So Jesus can cling to him, right? And sleep with his head on his chest. It's just gorgeous. I don't know. Like a beautiful rendering of the ideas that I think biblically that Judas and Jesus, like a lot of it, I don't know. There's so much about the Gospels and the biblical canon that's like so valuable, right? And something that you were saying earlier about reading the Bible as literature, right? There's just like so much to be gained from the interpretive act, right?
Yeah, but the depiction of Judas in this movie is unique to the movie, right, or the book. I don't think any of that sort of dialectic exists in the gospel, or
right. But I think that the interpretive act that, what's the author's name?
Nikos. Kanzakis.
I think when you start asking questions as I think you do naturally when you encounter the story of like what does Judas mean in this story, right? And trying to figure out like what could it mean, right? Yeah, I think this is like a beautiful rendering of where that can take you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Anyways, Harvey Keitel's goated. Is this his first movie with Scorsese since Taxi Driver?
That's a good question. I think maybe actually. Let me see. I think yeah, it is. Yeah.
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 And then before that, there's only Mean Streets, right?
Who's That Knocking at My Door?
Who's That Knocking?
Mean Streets. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore.
Oh, there's a bunch then.
Taxi Driver, Last Temptation, and then Nothing Until the Irishman. After that, yeah. Maybe I don't know I don't know what his reaction was to. I mean, I don't think that's why he stopped working with him, right? But I mean,
this guy's poison.
Well, I don't know. I love the casting in this movie. Like a lot of the other kind of New York kind of regulars. Like it's cool that John Lurie is one of the There's that other guy. Oh God, he's not a name people necessarily recognize.
Who's John Lurie play?
John Lurie is James.
James.
I think it's Paul Herman maybe is Philip, like one of the kind of meathead looking guys. Like I know there's a lot of them.
Well, this I like whoever plays Peter, his portrayal is so funny.
Oh yeah, no, that's the guy I'm trying to. Victor
just got
Argo,
a head full of rocks.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
And he's in Mean Streets, he's in Taxi Driver, he's in King of New York. Yeah. He's in those kind of He's in those kind. He usually plays like that kind of guy. Like hey, like I'm over here. Get over here. Hey, you, come over here. But now he plays, he plays one of the disciples. And he has pretty much the same affect.
Yeah.
Which,
at what point Judas is like, you know what I like about you? You're like a big rock.
Yeah. Harry Dean Stanton is Saul / Paul. I think is good. Yes. Yeah. I now understand what you meant by that last night. Yeah. I think Barbara Hershey as Mary Magdalene is good as well. I know it's like a pretty small performance, but she was the one who introduced Scorsese to the book.
In his hands, which is
cool. Yeah. And he was like made her audition just so that it didn't feel like he was just giving her the role because she turned him on to it. But like they had worked together obviously in Boxcar Bertha, right? And it's one of his first movies. But and then also we have David Bowie as Pontius Pilate in like one small scene. I know, which is like a very like you can see why people would have maybe been difficult to take seriously, like some of the casting choices. Like it's a good performance. Like it's a small performance, right? But that scene is great. I love when he says to Jesus something along the lines of like you know whether it's love or whether it's the acts, like you want things to change and we don't, and that's why we're going to kill you. Yeah.
Well, he also says something about how like Golgotha is a mountain of skulls. Yeah. I wish people would look at it sometime. Maybe things would be different.
Yeah.
But of course they won't be, or something like that.
Yeah. I think he's great. It's funny if you look at Scorsese's initial attempts to make this film, how many other rock stars he tried to get in this movie. Yeah.
Sting is Pontius Pilate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot off David Lynch's Dune. He would have been Fade Routha and then Pontius Pilate. Yeah.
There's something so funny about stunt casting in Jesus movies.
Yeah.
That I don't understand where that tradition comes from.
I don't know. I guess it's just like, well, it's either stunt casting or it's like you have to get someone who has some sort of an anonymity and like kind of a very like blank sort of everyman kind of quality to them, like a Ted Neely, for example, in I know it's because he could
He
sing.
didn't have the voice of an everyman.
He did have an amazing voice, but or whoever, or like Jeffrey Hunter in King of Kings is like just like a kind of matinee idol Jesus, right?
I just think of John Wayne as Longinus.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, like that's weird.
Yeah.
In the biblical epics, you have to have Edward G. Robinson somewhere in there. You have to have all these it's just so you can have the big list of credits and people can have something to look forward to, 5 hours into your 10-hour long movie that nobody likes. Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, maybe we can talk a little bit about the reception of it. Like, it was obviously very controversial. People were picketing theaters. In one case, as we've mentioned a couple times, integralist Catholic group set fire to the Saint Michel Cinema in Paris while it was showing. 13 people were injured and 4 people were severely burned. Making, or just watching this movie. There was a full-on terrorist attack because of this. Speaking of Zeffirelli, who we've talked about a couple times, noted director and sex pest. When this movie screened in the Venice International Film Festival, he pulled his movie, Young Toscanini, the movie that is on the tip of everyone's tongues, Young Toscanini. And good riddance, right, to bad trash. It's since come out, that Zeffirelli was a very abusive, not just abusive director, like so many of them are, but actually a sexual abuser and pervert and fucking, So it is funny that he made what is, had become a kind of definitive telling of the gospel. And then was so incensed by Scorsese's whatever version that he pulled his shitty movie nobody likes out of the Venice Film Festival. What version is being watched today? Obviously not this version in Catholic school, I don't think.
I definitely think they're probably still
showing the Zeffirelli. They still show the Zeffirelli Romeo and Juliet. Oh, I mean, maybe not anymore now that those actors have also said we felt taken advantage of by Zeffirelli. So I don't know.
Olivia Hussey was 16 and they...
Yeah. She shows her boobs in it. Yeah.
It's weird.
It is weird. Yeah.
It's not she's just she's very sexualized in that movie.
I actually haven't seen it.
Oh, really?
They never showed it to us.
That was another one that they showed.
Do you know what the cool teacher thought it would be cool to show the much more contemporary Baz Luhrmann version?
Oh
which
plus Juliet.
Romeo plus Juliet, which is a pretty great movie to show high school kids. I think actually,
where they call their guns swords.
Yeah. But they still say "I bite my thumb" at the end. They do bite their thumbs, which is funny.
That's a fun movie.
That is a fun movie. I'd like to watch that again.
There's Romeo and Juliet meet. They're on the opposite ends of a fish tank, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty cute.
I know. It is pretty cute.
And Pete Postlethwaite, friend of the pod, is the apothecary.
Yeah. That's true. The worst apothecary in fiction.
Mm-hmm.
What else do we want to say about the movie? Do you want to rate it?
Yeah.
It sounds silly, but
I don't have much else to say. If you guys are ready for a rating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
right.
5 out of 5 for men.
How many temptations?
Yeah, 5. Wait. How many temptations
I like it
were
when
there?
you give bizarre numbers.
Yeah.
Listen, I know at the end of the day, rating systems are arbitrary, and you just listened to us talk for the movie for however long, so you kind of know how we're feeling about it. Yeah. But I just think it's funny and fun to do.
I agree.
So how many temptations out of 5?
Well, for me, it's a 5. I don't know. Chris, who was watching some of the movie with us, was before you guys were there, was asking what's your rating for this? And I was like, oh, this is a 5-bagger for Benny. And he was like, well, do you think it'll change? I was like, I would be very surprised if my opinion of this, but I think maybe this will be a bit of a theme of these Jesus episodes, but similar to what you were talking about, Lucas, kind of trying to re-examine some of the religious things you were brought up with but now like under your own lens as like an adult and like coming to it on your own terms, right? Like I don't have that upbringing to kind of re-examine, but I do like to think about spirituality and try not to be dismissive, try not to be Reddit atheist, try not to be Richard Dawkins about it, which was definitely a period I also went through, like as so many people do in high school or whatever, or maybe even into early university or whatever, to try not to dismiss like spiritual ideas, right? But at the same time, not to get caught up in what it is increasingly becoming a very concerning kind of trend of like, fucking like trad cath, like ironic, like Catholicism, which is so obnoxious. Like all these people who are like spiritually bereft and bankrupt, some of the worst people on the internet who you can follow and be fake friends with are also now Catholic for some reason, that also bothers me. So, I mean, I'm not obviously not talking about that, but so what I was saying was maybe, like a film like this can only really grow in my estimation, I think. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like every time I approach this film, I just think it offers so much to chew on and the complexities it draws out from the characters that I just get so much pleasure watching and thinking about it. To me, it's like an easy 5 out of 5. I love it. I think part of its appeal to me, it's like a 5 out of 5, but it's not a perfect movie. It's like strange in a lot of ways that I think compromise it, but also add to its like extremely unique texture. There's just like nothing like it. It's so singular, and nothing else like it from Scorsese until, of course, his new Jesus movie, which I'm sure will be just as good. Silence comes very close to this. Like in particular, like Scorsese is so good at ending movies, and the ending of this movie is like stunning, literally transcendent, right? I mean that whole sequence, but specifically, like you were saying, that section where Judas, like, rouses Jesus from his Satan slumber, to like come back and accept and have faith in himself and God and accept his fate. And then specifically that final shot, like, is so like a perfect sort of melding of like performance and, cinematography, right? Like the huge, like the Michael Ballhaus like push in on with the whooshing kind of airplane, which is basically from Simon of the Desert, like whooshing in, and then of course that kind of however fake or real it is, like film being overexposed. I did find what he said. It said that somebody had opened the camera. And exposed some of the film, some of that specific take to sunlight, and it didn't make it go all Stan Brakhage, but it did give it that kind of fogging that then basically would have ruined it had they not like made a conscious decision to change it and add that color and add that, which is so beautiful. It's like so beautiful that it just feels manipulated to me because of how the color is so deep and rich. Yeah, it must be. Yeah. It must be. Yeah, but that I mean, some movies when the film spools off and you're like, we're watching a movie, like Gremlins 2. Like actually, the only 2 movies that are allowed to do it are this movie and Gremlins 2. Every other time it's tacky. The ending of Silence, similarly, I think reaches that point of transcendence in a very different way. I guess I just haven't seen it in a long time. Yeah,
Lucas, how many Temptations out of 5?
Sorry, I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna say first, I'm very anti-rating. I think it's all fake and total bullshit.
Hell yeah!
I'm gonna give it a 2. It didn't do it for me. I think if I were to watch it again through the Jordan lens, I would probably rate it higher because that's very beautiful and nice. But I think I was too distracted from my own just projection of what was happening to really let a lot of that narrative in, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if I gave it a second watch, I might go higher. But yeah, and there were some other things I didn't like about it. But yeah, nice.
I would love to hear you talk about the other things you didn't like about it.
I don't know. Yeah, I think like I mentioned some of them that we said, the whole New Yorker thing. I guess I don't know if that's a fair criticism.
I don't think it's totally unfair, right?
It's part of the weird texture of the movie.
Yeah, it's part of the texture of the movie, and I know we were sort of saying, well, people don't like you either don't get it or you get it. Like I don't think it is that simple necessarily, right? I think there's nuance there. Like I understand if it doesn't work for you.
Yeah. The sort of like Chad Jesus, macho, like charismatic Jesus. Really, I kept having
that's
these images flashing through my mind of like historically accurate Jesus, and also like I think that my interpretation of the Jesus figure is not like that. Like I think I would envision someone who is like very, I don't know, a lot more like humble, not as like super out there, and like in the stuff where he's like, yeah, we're gonna like fight with fire or whatever. I found that and seeing it through the like Jesus sort of lens, I understand why he's speaking in that way, but like that kind of thing really violated for me my mental like picture of the Jesus figure, because I see him as like someone who would not be talking like that. Yeah, but yeah.
I would be so curious for you to watch The Passion of the Christ for that macho thing, because I think that it's a really interesting depiction of Jesus as like a figure of what's the word? Like his like rebellion is very physically embodied in a lot of moments in that movie that I find like deeply misguided and strange. Yeah. Alex, did you give your rating?
No. I'd give it 4.5 Temptations out of 5. I thought it was an S tier Marty movie. It was an S tier Marty and Paul Schrader movie.
Yep.
I like them a lot together. It's probably so far like one of my, if not my favorite depiction of this story, for those little like, you know, diversions and excursions this movie goes on. I really enjoyed those. Yeah, like, you know, through so far in this franchise, we've been gauging our closeness to Christ as well to see if these movies affect that.
Yeah, we have a closeness to Christ meter. Yeah, that we're
Christometer.
Yeah, the Christometer.
And you know what? Like maybe I'm just.
It's been so long. Did the other one bring us? No, it didn't. Right?
No, it didn't. No. Well, it didn't do it for me.
I like the Jesus Christ Superstar movie. I think the portrayal of Judas in that movie is the strongest part of the movie. It's extremely different than this. But it did not fill me with like God's light.
And this one didn't really move the needle for me either, you know, like I'm just starting to think that maybe Christ has no place within these walls.
Yeah, well, possibly.
And that's okay. And but on top of that as well, like I don't think it's like a perfect masterpiece or anything, but so far, you know, in my life, I think for a while this was probably the most brutal and graphic Jesus movie too, until it got dethroned by a certain mad man.
Yes, a certain mad Mel, if you will. Yeah. But
yeah, I would totally, you know, watch this again one Easter or something like that. Like it's fun to see Marty and Paul's take on this story. So
do you think Marty and Paul have sort of a Judas Jesus kind of dynamic?
No, they have a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern dynamic.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true.
Wait, is there a scale that you're putting this on, or is this just a like?
Well, it's more of like just like the tomato meter.
It's a percentage.
Here's something I'll say for.
Well, I have to answer mine. Well, you go ahead.
Oh, you need to go ahead first.
Well, we're the only one who are rating the. You know, you don't have to. No, you do have to after. Go ahead.
I just feel like in my own relationship with the Gospels and the story that's being told here, I just think that there's so much that you can divine out of the story of Christ, right? There's obviously been like thousands of years of understanding and interpretation and apologetics surrounding the church and Jesus. And I think the Catholic Church has, like, for the most part, like, utterly debased any kind of meaning that I could get. Like, it's just been so thoroughly like perverted, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I would say that, like, this is a film that where I could see myself getting something out of the gospel narrative, out of the story of Jesus, in a way that, like, I normally look at the church and I look at Christianity and I think, like, there's just nothing for me here anymore. It really doesn't mean anything to me. And yeah, watching Last Temptation is like one of the few places where I go, other than like some poetry and some music that is obviously very like divine, like has divine inspiration, is like meant to be devotional, right? Yeah. Like that kind of thing, just because I find, I mean, music's, the power that music has to like move, at least is like beyond comprehension. So if a beautiful piece of music that is commissioned by the church, you know, hits me, I'll be like, well, fuck, there's nothing I can do, even though I hate everything about this in concept. But the Passion of the Christ, Last Temptation of Christ, yeah, it's like to me one of the bits of Christian art that, like, or storytelling that still makes me feel like there's a lot of value in like Jesus as a figure and an idea.
Yeah, same. I think this movie does move me up several notches on the Christometer, because I don't have necessarily the same foundation as well as maybe as all three of you in like experience with religion, like, or you know, that like childhood experience, right? So for me, feeling very removed from it and feeling like very removed from spirituality in general, I typically only well, I think this is the case for a lot of people, that you know, I look to art to have these spiritual feelings, right? Whether they're spiritual in a religious sense or in maybe a more like ineffable sense or whatever. Maybe it's all the same thing. I don't know. But this is a piece of art that that does move me, like, and that does, and I would say even I can kind of think about the last couple of times that something like specifically Christian, it would be Gospel according to St. Matthew, even though I know that is tied into Pasolini's, it's a very different thing, but it's still like that. It's still those teachings and that a portrayal of that story and of that character. The number one character of all time, Jesus Christ, number 2 Judas. And then music as well. Like, and honestly, sometimes the only time that comes up is like Christmas, like, and the, like, this Sufjan Stevens Christmas album, "Oh Holy Night," like, you know, yeah, like shit like that. These are the things that actually make me feel a connection to that Christian God, you know.
There's
like those works of art.
There's an episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion where there's like a robot fight set to Handel's Messiah.
Yes.
The Hallelujah chorus.
Yeah.
That, like, I couldn't believe. Yeah. The music really still gets me. But.
Yeah.
Ben, I think it's your turn to introduce the next film in the quadrilogy.
Does Lucas need to talk about whether or not does Lucas need to put himself on the Christometer?
I was just assuming that, given that you gave it a 2, it probably didn't,
right?
It did not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it didn't make you believe make you feel any less about Christ, right?
No,
I would feel bad.
Not really. I feel like I
Made you a
knew
Satanist.
all that stuff already. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's nice to rewatch a movie like this every few years and sort of reevaluate your relationship to it in terms of the Christometer or spirituality. Like the last time I did it, it literally was over Easter, and I was showing it to my family, and I was kind of watching my grandma watch it and seeing, because she has a very strange relationship with spirituality and Jesus, and I don't know. It's just interesting. I was thinking about her while I was watching it, and sort of like, well, that maybe that's all that needs to be said. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, we've talked about it. We've referenced it a lot. We've mistakenly called this movie the other movie several times. The movie, of course, that we are doing next week is Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, a movie that I have seen. I saw it when it came out, probably on my mini DVD player, like a movie that our family rented, didn't watch all together. I think my parents watched it first and then were like, you should watch this. And then I watched it, and I don't remember it very well at all. I have not seen it since then, but all that I do remember from it was this overwhelming feeling of like dread and anxiety, because it is like an incredibly violent movie and very bad vibes. And I'm super excited to check those out again and, see. I think in the time since then, I have, well, obviously Hacksaw Ridge came out, Mel Gibson, uncanceled, forgiven for his sins, martyred by liberal Hollywood, by the woke moralists, but he's come back. And I mean, I know this was a while ago, but the same year that Martin Scorsese made Silence with Andrew Garfield, he did make his religious violent epic, Hacksaw Ridge, and it was nominated for Oscars and therefore embraced by Hollywood. But I have also seen Apocalypto, the movie he made right after this, a movie that I would say is similarly kind of not nauseous, but also pretty fucking cool, in some other ways, right?
I like Apocalypto quite a bit.
Have you ever seen Apocalypto, Jordan Lucas?
I actually haven't.
Apocalypto is so
a tiger eats a guy's face.
It's like Mad Max in the jungle.
He's a crazy guy. He's a crazy guy who as you were saying, to watch a Mel Gibson film is to experience the sort of unfiltered kind of
adrenaline fueled
madness of the man himself, right?
Can I don't want to get carried away, but The Passion of the Christ,
well, maybe you'll come back and talk about it.
I would love to. I haven't seen it since high school, like I said. I just think it's interesting the like way that, like, probably the most popular way to receive cinema is author theory, right? And I just think in a lot of ways that's a flawed concept. But Mel Gibson, I think he is like an undeniable like force as a director. And I think a huge part of that comes from his singular ability to put his like sense of personality in, like, it's threaded into every image and every idea. And there's like this thing that Will Sloan from Important Cinema Club will talk about sometimes when a director makes a film and he says,
spilling your guts.
For this film, the director just cut their guts open and spilled them on a table for all of us to just look at, like all their ugly insides. And Mel Gibson does that with every movie. He's just ripping his disgusting guts open and telling you to look at it. And I think that's cool.
He is not capable of making a film otherwise.
He's just such a sick man.
He's a sick man.
Anyways,
he is.
Prince Andrew, you're a sick man.
Well, that's also true.
I don't know if you still are planning on doing
No,
what we watched.
no.
Can I just say one thing?
No.
Oh no, never
You
mind.
can say one thing. You can say one.
I just think people really should watch the movie Dream Deceiver. It's on YouTube
Oh,
if you can find it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's really, really good. That's all.
There you go. We'll just carry over to another week because I got a lot. I mean, it would take too long.
No,
yeah,
it'd be a disaster.
and it's already long. So
it's 2.5 hours.
That's crazy. This could be one of the longest episodes. That's okay though. I thank you both for coming on, and I know we've talked about this movie Jordan before, but I'm excited that we got to watch it with you, Lucas. Like whether or not you liked it, well, I didn't know. I didn't really know how you'd react to it, but whether or not you liked it, you got to admit it's a pretty interesting work, right?
No, I'm very happy I watched it.
Yeah. And we forced you to be on the show.
Yeah, you're part of La Famiglia now.
Yeah, we're gonna force you back someday, and maybe we'll talk about a movie that you do like. Yeah. Yeah, come on. Yeah, I mean, it would be an interesting study. Seeing how you reacted to this, I'm very curious how you would, even if you don't come back, just watch it and let us know.
Okay,
because I'm super curious.
We should try to watch it together.
Yeah, it's like
let's all hang out and watch The Passion of the
Christ.
Christ.
Catherine wants to be on also.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
She was talking about it when we saw End of Evangelion.
All right, well, it's happening. It's fucked. it's I actually don't really remember. That's why I'm so excited.
I watched it while I was cat sitting someone's cat in grade 8.
Yeah.
And then my mom was like, I told her I watched it, and she was like, "It's good. It's good. You watched it."
Well, that's okay. We'll talk.
Yeah,
but
we'll save it.
I remember my parents sort of being like, "This is something you should watch.
It's important.
It's important."
Yeah.
But that was the vibe even amongst not particularly religious. It was this is important. This is an important work of art.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is so funny.
Because it's insane.
Yeah.
It's a psychotic movie.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah. Well, join us next week. Where
Jonas Mekas?
Jonas Mekas.
Jonas Mekas next week.
Yeah, Jonas Mekas next week. As I was moving ahead, occasionally I saw brief glimpses of booty.
I love you, Jesus Christ.
Salvation. Father, take me back. Make a feast. Welcome me home. I want to be your son. I want to pay the price. I want to be crucified and rise again. I want to be the Messiah.